Cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice bread, not one garage, not a bit of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up, we ain't giving up no dreams.
For August 11, 2023. Welcome. You know, as the program begins, I always let you know, call up a friend, call up your neighbor, let them know that Facing the Nation is on. Of course, we're on all our social media platforms, the People's National Congress Reform page, and the APNU AFC page on Facebook. You can also find us on the People's National Congress Reform YouTube as well. So call up persons and let them know we're on. Of course, like every Friday, our topics will range and we will have some very important issues to talk about. A lot has happened this week. And like I promised, this week I have a special guest who, of course, is no stranger to this program. And, you know, there's so much to talk about in such a short space of time. So I do not want to delay bringing on my guest today. My guest today is none other than Member of Parliament, Miss Coretta MacDonald. Welcome.
Well, good afternoon to you, and thanks for having me on this program. I nearly said to you, welcome. I thought it was advancing the cause.
I know that feeling when you're sitting in the same space, you know? Well, there are so many issues to address today. You know, a whole lot has been happening, things moving very rapidly, and we have a very short time. Now, last week on my program, what I actually dealt with was the issues that we would have faced since the government has been installed the 3 years, because we were just coming off of their
anniversary,
their third year anniversary. And I just wanted to get your thoughts about how you feel and, you know, since then, what it looks like in your space as well.
Well, you know, I really don't have to give my credit to the PPP government for their 3 years in office. Mm-hmm. It's clear there for everyone to see. Mm-hmm. And like I said before, I would rate them very high for their incompetence, mismanagement, discrimination, divide and rule. And for that, I would give them A. And that A would not be only A plus, but it would be A for atrocious. And that's how they've been for the last 3 years. When you look at what has happened in this country, just a couple of months ago, we had the alleged rape of a 16-year-old. 20 innocent Indigenous lives were lost. Mm-hmm. And that's clearly incompetence. Mm-hmm. When we look at the manner with which persons have been dismissed, when we look at the monies they have been returning to Parliament, only returning to Parliament for monies, mm-hmm. every time within the last 2 weeks, we've seen the amount of billions of dollars they've returned to Parliament for outside of the budget. And this is all saying to us that the government is incompetent. What are you doing with all of those monies that were approved in the National Assembly? The people, the regular citizens are not benefiting from it. So it's a clear case of incompetence and a government who mismanages the resources that we have in this country.
I couldn't agree with you more, because like you said, you know, and we're going to get in, my next question deals with what we've been seeing in the, even talking about the labor sector. But, you know, the fact that they're going to Parliament so often for these monies, it tells that they have no plan. You know, they're coming up every now and again with all of these things, and then they come and rush things through. But I don't want to get into Parliament yet because we got a lot to talk about, especially the last Parliament sitting that was held. I wanted to touch a bit on we saw the president talking about, importing labor. This conversation is intensifying again. And with that happening also, we're seeing that there is a high number of unemployment. And you're also seeing them running around giving, these cash grants to me, anyhow, for businesses, etc. No real training putting out for the areas that they're claiming they're lacking services. There is nothing in the media in regard of training to get people, employed in these sectors. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so the PPP, let me say this first of all, is an anti-working class government. Workers' interest is not their business. Their business is corruption, more corruption, drugs, discrimination, and the 3 Fs. That's their business. And so, I can't understand. I'm still trying to figure out, how is it that a government is employing truck drivers? We have had persons driving trucks here, combines. They've been operating in the mining fields and so on. And we have recognized, and they've recognized this, that Guyana as a nation, we are developing. Our oil sector is blooming. And if it is that we need truck drivers, I've seen the Ministry of Labor doling out monies here, there, and everywhere, and they're doing a training here. Aren't these issues discussed at cabinet meetings? And if they're not discussed at cabinet meetings, then we got a serious problem. So to say that we're importing truck drivers, Guyana ain't got people who could drive trucks. That's what we're saying. And if we don't have, what systems have you put in place
to increase?
Have you been doing training sessions in terms of teaching, pulling persons, putting out a notice out there in the newspapers, on television, and having persons come apply and come in, and you do testing with them, and if they're not up to your speed, then you do the kind of training. But what we've recognized is that Guyana has now become a country where we, the Guyanese people, are foreigners in our own country. We've seen the massive influx of Venezuelans and Cubans and Indians and Pakistanis and you see some from a very few from Asia and Nigeria and those places. And these persons, especially and we've seen lots and lots of Chinese too. These persons are now here and they have become, it's as if they've gotten bona fide rights to put up businesses and to bring their people in to employ them. And when they employ our people, they work them to dust. Now, I would have expected that the Ministry of Labor would take those kinds of things into hand, where our people are being allowed to work for long hours. They don't get time and a half. They don't get double pay. They're sent home for coming to work a bit late. They're sent home. If they take one day off, then the monies are deducted from their salaries. And then we're talking about importing drivers. We've got so many men out there, and women too, who can operate heavy duty trucks, but we're not looking at them. But this thing is, the PPP is good at this. They're all about trade-off. So they give you something and you give them something, and we trade off, putting the Guyanese people at risk. And they don't care. We've seen they almost every store you go to on Regent Street, you got 3, 4, 5 Spanish working in those stores. I mean, I don't have a difficulty with that. But while we are employing those persons, what is happening to our people? Our people are left with them being unemployed. We've got lots of youths. If you walk now down Sheriff Street, you're going to find at almost every corner, and if you turn into Duncan Street heading to Sophia, you're going to see at every corner youngsters there without jobs. What is most disappointing is that you'll find many in those same flocks or those same numbers or groups. You're going to find many of them with 5, 6, 7, 8 CXC subjects, some with a university degree, but they can't find jobs. But we import in all kind of labor we import in. And while we're importing all kinds of labor, the people we have here, we are not compensating them for their work. And so our nurses are leaving in droves.
And our doctors.
Our doctors are leaving in droves. Our teachers are leaving too. We'll see that come September 4th when school reopens. How many schools are without teachers? Because teachers, let me tell you, the PPP talk about how good they treat people. But nobody don't leave good. You don't run away from good. All people always say that you don't run away from good.
Correct.
So if you're treating our people good, then they will not leave. Let me give you a perfect example. Our nurses at the Liliendal COVID Center, wherever the fancy name, I can't even remember now, the fancy name they have for that hospital there, the infectious hospital. The nurses there used to have an allowance.
Like a risk allowance.
A risk allowance, let's say that. You know what this government is doing right now? They have taken that away from the nurses. Whether it was $35 or $45 or $50,000 risk allowance, they're giving them $10,000. You tell me how many of those nurses will continue to risk their lives and that of their families to remain there for $10,000.
Yeah.
And that is how wicked this government is. That's how wicked they are. I have learned in labor practice and labor relations that you don't ever take what is there, but you give more. You don't take away what benefits that people have gotten. But this is the same government who talk about, I'm not sure, maybe another time you'll be able to play it. This is the same government where the president now, who was the Minister of Housing,
went on bad about public servants.
When he was in opposition, he gave a whole long speech about public servants and how public servants should be treated and how teachers should be treated. But we can talk about teachers at a later date.
And that's when he called for the 50% increase.
Yes, and that's when he asked about collective bargaining. What has happened to collective? But here we're having no bargaining. All we're having here is a government who knows well how to bully and to intimidate people and to trade off.
And you know, the other side of it, we hear them, and I sat in awe hearing them talk about local content. The last sitting. And you know, some of these things that we're discussing that should have catered across sectors and not just in the oil and gas sector, in regards to hiring and that kind of thing, nothing of that nature, but they're boasting about local content in that sitting.
But you know, Shaneika, if I were to say, you talk about local content, and you have no safety measures in place for our people. I think it was 2 weeks ago, a man fell down from Buddy's place there on Cherry Street. On Cherry Street. Then we had one on Regent Street. Yeah. And then we had one over the river. And then we had in Region 3 at Frida Nook somewhere there.
We had the incident in Region 10.
We had the incident in Region 10. We had another incident in Region 3. And so you're wondering, and just yesterday I heard Bobby Vera talking about it on his radio station, and he said he was passing, I can't remember exactly where he was passing, but he saw the men there working on tall buildings, and they had no safety measures in place. And we got a Minister of Labor who would stand up in Parliament and talk a whole lot of trash. He has now become one of the abusers of the PPP. So rather than addressing the issue at hand and giving content, he abuses. That's what he knows how to do. And we have labor on the decline, and he says nothing about it.
That's so true. The
labor officers, you don't see them anywhere around. We've got lots and lots of our children, underage children, who are employed in the security services. You don't see the labor officers out
Right.
there. You've got all these persons who I've talked about doing construction work, and you don't see labor officers out there checking to see how the workers, the safety of the workers, whether the place is cordoned off properly, whether there are signs and so on. You don't see any of those. And so one wonders whether the PPP is just sitting there and enjoying taxpayers' monies for them, their friends, and their families, and they just don't care about the citizens, or it's just that they are bent on being bullies and they say, we will do
As we please.
as we please.
I believe personally it's a bit of both, because the things that we're seeing them putting out and the things that they're doing, in my head, it's a clear sign that you don't care about Guyana, more so Guyanese. And also,
It's clear because when we look at the manner with which the families of the 20 innocent indigenous children who would have died, when we look at the treatment that is being meted out to their families, after hearing that big speech about how sorry they are about this incident and they're going to take care of the families, they will maintain them. Now you're hearing $5 million and this is the final settlement. And then on top of that, when persons started to talk about it, you were hearing, we didn't have to do this and we didn't have to do that and the government didn't have to do that. So when you can treat people that way, then you can imagine there is no counselor there offering counseling to those family members. No counselor offering counseling to those students who were in that dorms and they were pulled out. You have no counselors offering counselors to the residents of Mali. As a matter of fact,
and
the government is so brutal that they demolished the dorm. And the debris from the dorm, they were using it
to build the road,
to fill holes in Campbelltown. If the residents there did not protest, they would not have stopped that. More than that, residents found burnt chains. So this is saying to you that the possibility exists that ash from those children were in the midst there. And that is how brutal the PPP is. That's how brutal they is. When you look at what has happened with local government elections. I have to talk about this all the time. They went into Alwise Town. Quick time they put up that boulevard. Of course, I am not against development. I am all for development. But I cannot be for development when it is washy-washy development. So we put up a boulevard there. The Sunday night before local government elections on Monday morning, it was declared open, big walkabout and so on. 2 days after we noticed the tables there, they're broken and the seats are broken. Cheap labor. When you look at the streets that are running parallel to the boulevard, all of those streets are broken up. When you have to leave that stretch of road there, when you turn off there from Punch Ranch, when you're coming down Hunter Street there, you turn into Punch Ranch there, and you're going down any one of those. There's a big slump there. Yeah, and if you're not careful, your vehicle graze and your mesh pan pull out and all kind of thing. And all of those streets got big potholes. Now, any sensible government, any sensible minister of public infrastructure, public works, would know that if you're going to do the boulevard, then all of those side streets would have been used to bring materials in. And while you're using those streets, which were not built for those heavy duty machines and carrying sand and so on, they're going to be damaged. So while you're doing this, ensure that when this part would have been completed, you'll fix this. But you know what? Local government elections is gone. They took a licking in Georgetown. And so those streets are going to be left right there until sometime later next year, you're going to see them coming there to fix those streets. I mean, this is crazy. This is crazy.
You know, with that being said, I want us to begin to speak about the last parliament sitting. The last parliament sitting, basically, for the viewers' knowledge, because I know we covered it right through, and persons in the morning were asking us this, And I even went on there to mention, yes, it's live. A parliament sitting that lasted 24 hours from Wednesday at 10 to about 9 on Thursday morning. And basically from the lunch break, you had no breaks for the parliamentarians other than, you go in, you exchange or you did whatever as they proceeded. And before we go into it, I want to say this to that because it shows as we continue to talk about the lack of planning and incompetence, about the government. When you had all these months, 7 months leading to now, we're in the 8th month, and you decided that you weren't going to keep regular parliament sittings, you skip how many months, you come when you want the money, etc. And then you pack an order paper the way they did. And I want to believe personally that in bringing those estimates and having those 3 bills that they had to debate that they knew persons wanted to deal with, especially the petroleum activities bill, that somehow their questioning would have been less in regards to the monies that they were coming for, because maybe parliamentarians didn't want to sit in parliament that long. And I believe they got a shock because on the coalition side, the opposition, you guys really stick to ensuring that you grill them on those monies. So from 10 to almost midnight, while I'm sure they weren't expecting the questioning to go so long, you ensure that you grill them in every form. And of course, we know what some of those answers are like, but I want to give a big shout out and respect to the parliamentarians who stuck that, especially that part out, trying to get accountability for the monies that the government is asking for. And then after that, you had those other 3 bills being dealt with, and the petroleum activity bills, which we had quite a few speakers on because it was an important bill while the opposition was seeking amendments as well. But we all know that ended without any of those amendments being put in after 6 hours of going through that. Let's talk about that.
Well, it's not the first time that we, especially as women, as female parliamentarians, have had to endure that. I think it is most disgusting. And it speaks to the level of respect that the males in government, 1, and 2, the Speaker of the National Assembly, that they have for females. It shows the level of respect they have for females. Because if you think highly of females, then you wouldn't have your female counterparts sitting from 10 in the morning to 9 the next morning. You wouldn't have that. Outside of that, we saw, and it's always a thing. It has now become tea, where the speaker, and let me say, he is the worst speaker that we've ever seen throughout the history of this country. He allows all kinds of sidebars from the government side, but he only hears sidebars from the side of the opposition. He allows the government ministers to go and banter about this and banter about that before they can actually give you an answer, or before they can actually say what they want to say. But every time you stand up as an opposition MP to give a preamble to what you want to ask, you're always told, please stick to the question, ask the question, stop all of this, stop all of that. And then you have the other aspect where there's a whole booklet, let me put it that way, a whole booklet of words that you can't use in the parliament. It's sad that Guyana, after all these years of being an independent country, we have not yet matured when it comes to our politics. We've not matured. And with that, it beams a dark day for this country and the people of this country. We have seen the government only coming to Parliament when they want monies. And because there's an absence of regular parliamentary sittings, you have a whole bulk there. And I think sometimes they do that on purpose because they feel they can burn the opposition MPs out, that after a certain time, you'll just either sit there and not ask any questions or you leave. I think if the Speaker of the National Assembly, if he wants to have fruitful discussions in the Parliament, then he would decide with the clerk and the chief whips how much we are going to do today. And we can do this 2 days after, and we can do another 2 days after. But of course, we know that he was put there by them. By the government. So he doesn't have the kind of balls to stand up to them to say, this is so, and this cannot be so, and that cannot be so. So he has got to go with the flow because the plan is, let's stretch it out and burn them out. Let them get fed up. So we'll just pass whatever we have to pass. But, when they plan that, you would hear old people say, man would appoint and God would disappoint. Or you would hear some people say, man a pint, God a gallon. So when they plan for us, on very, very many occasions, they're disappointed because they don't expect us to take turns in terms of asking the questions. And when we ask the questions, they don't expect the kinds of questions that they would sometimes get. And so that's why you find them bantering all the time before they can actually ask you the questions, and then they like to throw it. The AP and AFC did not do this. Your government did not do this. Your government did not do that. But I want to say it to our viewers. While the coalition was in office, when they took office in 2015, they had huge debts to repay. That's one. Secondly, with the limited resources they had left at their disposal, they ensured that all of Guyana, not a part, not two parts, not their constituencies, but all of Guyana, they ensured that the little resources were spread all across Guyana. So in areas in the hinterland where they had no electricity, the coalition ensured that they got electricity. Where they had no wells, they couldn't get water, the coalition ensured that they got not only wells and water, but proper drinking water, clean drinking water, not what we were experiencing again under the PPP government. While the coalition was in office, areas that hadn't roads, the coalition built roads until Edgel had said, you can't eat roads. Where there was not connectivity, we ensured that internet hubs were set up so that teachers, pupils, students, and other members of the community, that they were able to gain access to internet, to do assignments, to follow up on their reading, to do whatever they want to connect with the outside world. And the outside world is not only the US and Canada and so on, but the outside world, we sometimes look at it as being Georgetown, Linden, New Amsterdam, and so on, because when you live way out in the hinterland, you are actually shut out from everything else. So that can be placed into the group of outside world. But I listen to some people saying this and saying that and saying the other. But the fact is that the coalition government did much more without oil money
in the short space of time.
In that short space of time, until, of course, the Judas sided with them and with the no confidence motion. But we did much more in government. And I don't want to take you very, very far, but I must bring this to the attention of our viewers. During the coalition's term in office, education was on a different level. We saw passes in math and English language that we hadn't gotten in 23 years. When the coalition was in office, we had a police force that was professional. You hadn't that in 23 years. When the coalition government was in office, crime was on the decrease. you hadn't execution style. You might have had one or two, but the execution style murders that we were accustomed to having, you hadn't that. People's children were free, especially your sons, were free to walk the streets. You hadn't to worry when your sons went out that they wouldn't return and you wouldn't see them again. They were free to walk the streets. The entire atmosphere around this country was different, where Afro-Guyanese, Indo-Guyanese, Chinese-Guyanese, Amerindian, Guyanese, everybody, we saw each other as Guyanese, not as Indians and Chatri and so on. We saw each other as Guyanese, and the atmosphere was different. By the time the PPP returned to office, that whole wound was reopened. And what we had there, who was black man and who was Kuli man and who was this man and who was that man. And we no longer saw one people, one nation, one destiny. And that is not even the tip of the iceberg. It's deeper than that, where we are seeing in our ministries at this time a whole makeup, shake-up, makeover in the ministries. You check the ministries and you're going to see where you had a balance, and sometimes you might have had a little more of Afro-Guyanese, because in some sectors, you don't find other races wanting to be there, like the Guyana Police Force, the Guyana Defense Force. But if you check in the other ministries now, you are seeing many of our competent officers, especially if you're Afro-Guyanese, and if you're Indo-Guyanese and you have any linkage to the coalition, you're sidelined. Yeah. And we're seeing competence being replaced with incompetence. You check it. Look again at what we're having. Under the coalition, we had immigration offices built in Berbice, and you had the NIS office in Berbice even more functional. You check at the passport office in Camp Street. From 4 o'clock in the mornings, people are lining up there because they've closed the offices in the outlying regions where the coalition had set them up. During the coalition time, we had police blocks. As you go along the road, as you move from one region to another region, you check at what is happening now. You no longer have those things happening now. So the PPP government is a free-for-all, lawless government. And if you look at what has been happening recently, every day every 2 days you have a road accident and it's fatal. Every 2 mornings you got a shooting somewhere. Just the other day, we lost one of a very brilliant son of the soil, Dr. Olato Sam. And so this is saying to us that something is wrong in this country whenever the PPP is around. That's all it's saying to us.
And we had another similar incident just last night, where somebody went to a home to claim that they were evicting because they bought the property. And the persons felt that they were so big, they fired shots. And at the end of it, a man who was looking at the drama ended up dead, and another injured and is in hospital. So, these are the things that we're definitely seeing. And as I talked yesterday, we're seeing a lot of these incidents. And I did talk about Dr. Olato Sam on the last program as a point as well. I want to just bring 2 other things out of the Parliament session yesterday. And because of one of the headlines that I would have seen, but 3 things that I've seen between yesterday and today. I mean, let me start by saying that the minister within the Ministry of Local Government had absolutely in the first round no answers to give. And what you talked about where, you just saw somebody saying, oh, and the APNUFC or the coalition list, that's all you got. Not a single answer in the first round. Dealing with his ministry, did we get not even something resembling an answer from Mr. Prasad?
Well,
nothing.
Mr. Prasad is a very, very, Minister Prasad is a very special guy. And like I said yesterday, he is the reincarnate of Nigel Dharamlal. Those were the answers Nigel would have given if he was there. And I figure Nigel had a little class session with him and told him exactly what to say. Because you saw him there shuffling papers and he couldn't find the papers that he wanted. He didn't know exactly to say,
And
because he's not running the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So he can't answer the question. The most he could say there is, and we all do.
That's all he said
As
right
a
through.
minister, you expected a certain level of professionalism from him. But there was none. And those are the kind of brutes and crookish people that they have there who can give you those kinds of answers. Now you are here on national television. This parliamentary session is being viewed worldwide. And these are the answers that your ministers give. And you know what?
It was a shame.
When you go out there, you see the president, he gone here and he gone there and he gone all over the place. And you expect people to respect you when your government ministers can't even defend how they're spending monies. You're asking for increases. Imagine you finished spending all the monies you got not just the other day.
You can't justify
and you can't justify the amount that you can't even say how much you would have spent. But you're asking for more. And so that is saying to us that this is a government that is greedy. This is a government who's only concerned about, again, their friends, their families, and their favorites. You check the contracts that are given, and you'll see who get those contracts. When they tell you about, you hear Anil talk about, and MPs and ministers and their families can't apply for this and apply for that contract and apply for that. Man, look, we know how the names has changed, because if dead people's name could come back on list and dead people could vote, then you understand what we're dealing with in this country. And so, again, Minister Prasad needs a whole lot of help. We all know the story with him and so on and so on. But he needs help. And I would expect that at our next sitting, after we would have been returned from recess, that we might be able to see a different guy. But I can say to you that he is very, very racist. He's a racist. He's a racist. And if you hear some of the things that he would say
in that parliament,
that the speaker doesn't hear, it tells you how they view women, how they view people who don't agree with their policies.
All right. The other one that I want to touch on, because this morning I was running Facebook and I saw that the association that deals with sports has now announced that there will be no nationals because there is no facility to be used. And this, I was totally shocked when I heard that, because just in the last sitting, while all these monies are being asked for by the ministry under Charles Ramson, and him telling us all these wonderful things that he did that the AP and you didn't did, because in every explanation, that's the ground he went to, that at this stage, when we have athletes who have just completed the Commonwealth Games and had so many gold medals for us, that you're saying to us, the competition that allows us to get more persons involved and see their talents and be able to, push them up, that we have no facility to facilitate the national championship, senior and junior. Like, could we talk about that? To me, that is the epitome of incompetence.
Well, we know that Charles Ramson is incompetent. But what I can give the youngster kudos for is that he has learned a couple of words. And even though sometimes he doesn't know how to use them right, he has learned a couple of words, and at least he has learned to pronounce words now properly. We can give him kudos for that. But in terms of his competence in management, he has absolutely none. As minister, if you listen to his answers to MP Figueroa and some of the other MPs who ask questions. And if you listen to the responses he gave, then you'll understand that he doesn't understand what he's about. As a matter of fact, what the PPP did to him was an injustice. What Barry Jaguar did to him was an injustice, where they sent him to do oil and gas. And on his return, when they got into government, they gave him sports. Total mix-up. So he's confused. He's swimming. He doesn't understand what is there. This is one of the fellas who, too, believes that friends, family, friends, and favorites should be the high point of the day in terms of contracts and positions and mismanagement and abusing Guyanese innocent professionals. I am not surprised when I hear this coming from Charles Ramson, because you know what? Charles Ramson is not the kind of person who has been engaged in sports. So he doesn't understand, as a matter of fact, sports is not important to him. He doesn't understand the values of being involved in the different sporting disciplines, or being involved in one discipline, and what that brings to you as an individual. He doesn't understand that. So he sees sports, and more so, sports in the sense of athletics. He sees that as, them running around the place, and look who's running around the place. You know, the thing is, I don't want to come over as being a racist, but if you look at the athletes who do track and field, it's either Afro or the Amerindians. Many of our East Indian students and pupils, they don't really do well at athletics. You might have a few of them. You might find them at cycling, quite a few of them at cycling. But you look at how much this government put into cricket.
Yeah.
Look at how much they put into squash. Look at how much they put into tennis. But when it comes to track and field, and somewhat swimming, that's not their cup of tea. We just saw cricket. We have the cricketers here, West Indies and whoever else here. And look at the amount of emphasis
that
is being placed on that. We're going to have CPL just now.
And having a cool
all those grounds, you're going to see how the stadium is going to be fixed A111 for those matches to be held there. So certain disciplines within sports is priority for this government. Other disciplines are not priority for them. And I'm hoping that our people are seeing. And as I'm on this, let me extend congratulations to our athletes who have performed exceedingly well, even when the conditions are not right for them. But you know what? You can't take from a person what is inside of them. And if we were to pay attention to our athletes and to put in the kind of resources for them to be able to fully develop their potentials, then we would be at the level of competing with Jamaica and Trinidad and everywhere else.
100.
Not only at CAC, but at Olympics and at other games. The thing is, we have to have a government that is in love with people. A government that is all-rounded. Not a government who want to walk the streets to show people that you can be walking around the community and you're walking around here and you're walking around there. I know you residents tell you something. Oh, we can look at that just now. Oh, we can talk to this person. Oh, talk to that person. I'm hoping that our folks are seeing that there is a disdain within the PPP for Black people, and this is Afro-Guyanese, and for other persons who oppose their policy. There's a disdain for them. And so once there's a disdain for you, then you fall by the wayside. And that is as straight as it is. With the announcement of nationals being postponed, or there will be no nationals, well, that's another cup of tea that we'll have to mix the milk and maybe add some sugar and add some water. If the water there is too hot, we'll have to add some regular water to cool that off. That's another discussion. But it's that will be an embarrassment to this government. It would be a total show of disdain, and it would be a show of disrespect for one set of people who are geared to that discipline of sports.
You know, I can safely say, outside even track and fields, you have boxing and all these other things happening, that you don't see much government support in these areas. And, you know when I went to secondary school, I was a national athlete. And anybody participating in track and field, boxing, and all those other sports, you have no funding basically. If you don't find your own sponsors or have, what you call a lovely godparent who is willing to push you, if they see potential, it is not happening. And, I can safely say when the coalition was in power, we saw changes beginning to happen in those areas, and it's like we're automatically back to square one. I'm getting reports as well that the national trials where they would do the timings, for qualifications of different events as well has been canceled. That should have been held soon. And, as we're talking, persons are also complaining about other sporting activities that persons are getting zero support from the government.
Well, if it's clear as day for us to see. We have in Georgetown, we have the stadium, we have the police sports club ground, we have Iron Ghana, we had border just the other day that is now under repairs and so on. And let me say, we are not anti-development. But the thing is, if you have your home and you recognize that a board is losing, what are you going to do? Allow that board to fall out and you're going to look after another house somewhere else? You're going to fix what you have, ensure that it is proper, and then you go off to fixing another. So that when you go to fix another, you can now say, okay, I have two properties. And when that one is properly fixed, if you have the resources, you can go to acquire another, and then you fix that. But you don't leave what you have to fall to pieces and you go fixing. And we have seen what the PPP government is doing in Georgetown, what they are doing in Linden, what they are doing in New Amsterdam. And if you look at what they have been doing, let's look at the Berbice Bridge. You notice where they built the Berbice Bridge? Outside of the town, when one would expect that you would put a bridge in the town so that more businesses can be developed along that stretch. So all those persons who used to sell along that ferry road there, they've been out of jobs. They had to seek other employment. And this is what the PPP government are about. Every area where the PPP doesn't have a hold on, they punish you. And as we talk about punishing people, it brings me right to, I know this is outside of what we're talking about, but I have to say it brings me right to the manner with which public servants and teachers are being treated by this government.
Definitely. Another issue, we're talking about the speaker, and we only have, I just realized we basically probably have about 3 minutes or so to wrap up, but we talk about the speaker, his show of biasness, etc. We saw the motion being moved to have the discussion about the Madia dormitory. Again, it was denied. And then we saw yesterday 3 persons being put in place to apparently start that commission of inquiry. But one of what we talked about earlier, the fact that you have decided to give a certain amount of money, even before you had an inquiry to understand where your lapses are, what needs to be fixed, and really and truly the level or the depth of this issue, then you can give compensation. And so we see them now setting up that committee, and we are waiting to see those results. But I just thought it was worthy to mention that a motion was brought, the speaker shot it down, and next morning we see them now putting in a thing that the president had promised to do over a month before or more. And then he now has put that commission in place.
Well, it's about maybe 69, 70 somewhere.
No, it's about
days.
Near 80 days now.
Wherever, 60, 67, 68, 69, 70, 80, wherever days, since we had that fire at Madiam. I think it's about a week after that, the president said, and this is the PPP, they always try to come like Santa Claus to give you what they think you need to calm you down. And so they came up with that big, bright idea that there's going to be a commission of inquiry to find out all the details about what led to that deadly fire on that night. I think it was the 21st of June, something. Well, I can't remember the date. Anyhow, you were having an inquiry yesterday that was put in place. But you already paid the people $5 million and you said that's final payment. So if this commission of inquiry now comes up and put there the government as being responsible for the death of those children, and the inquiry now come out and say, well, okay, you're going to the government will have to pay liability or something to the tune of maybe $20 million per family or something like that.
Already had them signed.
Then what happens in that case? Because you heard the attorney general, and you know what they did? They went into those areas and they flew those parents out from Chinapau and all those areas where the students were from and brought them down to Madia. They were not even given the opportunity to read properly the document or have a legal mind there to say to them, well, okay, yes. This is right. No, you shouldn't do this. Let's ask for more time. They just flew them out, and people are grieving at this time. And what the folks at this time want to do, they want to be left alone to be allowed to grieve. And every time you come up with all kinds of things, it's bringing that feeling all fresh again into them. And so I think the people they just wanted to get over this, and they don't want to be disturbed anymore with that. So they went there. But who were the persons that sat there and decided $5 million for a 5-year-old, and the same $5 million for a 13-year-old, and the same $5 million for a 15-year-old? What was the criteria that was used to determine the amount of monies that you give to those people? And you know, this situation is a vexing situation. I know that we had one student who went overseas, and we're not hearing anything else about that student.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that student is doing pretty well. But you're not hearing anything else about that student. Is the government following up? Why isn't the nation being made aware and keep up to date with the progress of that child? Is this a lockdown thing between the government and the family members? You know, and so it leaves many, many more questions unanswered. More than that, the commission of inquiry that has been set up. Now, the witnesses there will probably have to be the students who were there. But were those students awake when the girl scratched the match, according to them, that this child scratched the match, and like, were they awake, or they were awoken by the heat? So who would be the witnesses to know that this little girl was the person who set the place afire? What then? You have to find out what were the conditions, what were the leading up events that led her to do such a drastic thing, you know? And so here again, failure on the part of, and I was asking all the time, and I was saying this all the time, that the Minister of Education, Priya Devi Manikchand, you know, she gets very upset when I call her name, but I have to call it. And I know one time she said, I'm obsessed, but Priya Devi Manikchand, you know, getting obsessed or being obsessed over you is zero for me. I don't do girls, but that's a different story. But the thing is, when you do wrong and when you're incompetent, I have to call you out.
Yes.
Just the same way you take pride in calling out the AP and you didn't do this and the AP and you didn't do that. When you do foolishness, we have to call you out. And I'm happy that I'm on your program. So foolishness is not a word that I'll have to retract or you delete it from the program.
Not at all.
When you do foolishness, people have got to call you out. We heard, we saw on the media, both print and on television, where the Guyana Fire Service did hint to them, the education department, in November and the latest February of this year, that place was dangerous. Those grills there are dangerous and they should be removed. But here again, Dharamlal wasn't interested in that. Maybe Dharamlal was interested in having the girls locked in there so he could pass in a night or two. So he kept the grills there. But these are all questions that I'm hoping
that will
the COI would be able to bring out. And that the COI, the 3 members of the COI, they're going to be professional enough to sit and analyze the information that they would have acquired and come up with proper recommendations and allow the penalties to fall where they should fall. And on that note, I'm hoping that all other dormitory facility across this country, whether school or if we talk about the army base or we talk about the police barracks and so on, that we're not going to have these kinds of foolishness in those buildings where you have to house people that you lock them away in cages as if they're animals. I'm hoping that the Guyana Police Force, the Guyana Fire Service, they're going to be on the ball, and that we're going to have officials from the Ministry of Labor helping to check those buildings too, to ensure that they are safe for persons to be in.
All right. We are definitely already out of time, but I want to continue to encourage our viewers as we have these conversations, as we raise these concerns, and we talk about it. As citizens as well, we have responsibilities, and not just our politicians. But when you're called upon, and when we have protests, and when it is time for us to speak out as a people, that we are there to do that. It is all well and good to make your comments and come in and talk about it here. But we have our responsibilities as citizens to continue to hold the government accountable, and any government that is in place, any system, any ministry, anywhere that you have to deal with, it is our responsibility as the citizens to hold the government accountable. And as we close, I just want to give you the opportunity, if there is anything else you want to say just before I close the program.
Well, Shaneika, I just want to say very quickly that this government, they're not open to criticism. They see criticism as something that is bad. They're not open to criticism. They're not even open to allowing the opposition member of parliaments to go out there and to have free visits, whether it's to the hospitals, the prisons, the schools, other health facilities or other places. They don't allow you that kind of privilege. There's always the bureaucracy where you have to write and inform them, and then they will send to tell you that you can't come this day, you're going to come that day, you can only go to this part. You're not allowed that kind of freedom. And I think it's because of that the information is always spilling out. You get the information Wild West because people understand the game they play. When they allow you to go visit one site, is because they go 3 days before and they prepare it well. So when you go there, you don't see anything wrong there. They send you to an area that has been recently renovated. So when you go, you don't see anything. The other thing that I want to say is that I'm hoping that as a people, we would not only allow the politicians or the opposition members of parliament to speak on issues, but that our nation, our people, you as a people, we as a people, that we are going to join forces and we'll come out and talk about these issues, talk about all the levels of corruption that we have seen. I want to say to the Minister of Public Works, come on, it's not rocket science. If you're going to be fixing roads and you're blocking off roads, then put up little signs there a day or two before so that residents would know I shouldn't drive down here because it's going to be blocked off from 10 o'clock in the morning until 12 the next day. Put up those little signs. Our citizens in South Romvelt, they're going through hell. Just give them an ease. The people in Pleasant, the people who live on the East Coast, when you're doing roads on the railway embankment and you're blocking off certain parts, people who got to come to work, they get to work late. When they got to go home, they reach home late. Y'all just fix the things and do it properly. Notify people beforehand that you can't, it's disgusting sometimes, even for me. Driving around the Georgetown, and when you're driving one path, when you reach there, then you recognize road is blocked, and you got to turn on. You just see cars turning around. Come on, y'all, fix it right. You need to fix the cemetery road too. Just carry your prayer warriors down there, and y'all pray and fix cemetery road, because that's another hustle and stress for people. Some days you're there and the traffic is it's coming down on the two lanes, and then when they reach a certain point, they have to cut off and come onto one side of the road. Come on, Bishop, fix it. You know everything. Fix it. I know that Jesus is not here, and if he was here, he would not have voted for the PPP. So he has left you. He has allowed that cup to pass from you. So I can understand the stress you're in. But finally, let me say to our citizens, let me warn our citizens that dengue, typhoid, COVID is on the rise. So please be careful when you go out there. Wear your mask if you have to be in huge crowds. Wear your mask. Sanitize as often as possible. If you recognize that you are having fever and that kind of thing, go get tested, because we cannot afford to lose more of our people. We've lost many during the 2020, 2021 when we had that COVID spread there, and we cannot allow to lose more of our people. We want you to be here to enjoy the resources of this country. So be good citizens. Let's talk about those issues. If you're afraid to talk about them openly, then send the information to some of us so that we can relay them for you. We can come to visit your areas, because I want you to understand that this is not one Guyana. This is about one people, one nation with one destiny. Again, congratulations to our athletes who've made us so proud.
All right, viewers, I want to thank you once again for joining Facing the Nation. It was a privilege talking with you, watching your comments as well as we speak. And I just want to say, join us next week, same time. I have a very special guest next week who will be here for the first time with us. So be sure to catch the program next week. Do have a wonderful afternoon.
'Cause we ain't giving up no mountain. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice bread, not one garage, not a bit of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no more. We ain't giving up. We ain't giving up no. We ain't giving up.
One.